Okay, welcome to another episode of the Square Up podcast, where we help you give your brand a fighting chance. I am so excited to have my next guest on today. One reason, because I know her. Like, this is my and I love when I have people I know on the podcast, because the conversation is just so natural and so cool, and we can be real. And because I've probably seen this journey that they're about to tell you about, I've watched it, and this is one of those cases where I have seen this from since before it was a thing. Like, here we are. Yes. But I have Courtney Pettway over here today from Pettway Estates. Hey, girl.
Hey, how are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for agreeing to do this. Let me tell y'all, Courtney, this is not her thing. She's trying to be on nobody interview. So this is done out of love, and I am greatly appreciated. I feel like y'all are probably tired of hearing me say that about podcast guests, but I am the extroverted friend of all of my friends. I'm an extrovert who hang out with a lot of introverts.
It's so funny because you're helping me, because I'm slowly learning to get out of my, I'm a very behind the scenes person. Like, I could care less to be like front and center. So this actually helps me. So believe it or not.
Okay, introverts, are you listening? Y'all need extroverted friends. We are beneficial. We are not here just to work your nerves all day. Like, we serve a purpose. That's what it is. Okay, so Courtney, can you just kind of give everybody just a rundown of like who you are, what you do, what you're currently working on now, what industry you're in, all that?
Okay, so I currently am in Kentucky, and to, I guess, make things simple and short, I invest in real estate. And so it's funny because a lot of people are like, well, I want to invest in real estate, not realizing how broad real estate is. Like, there's a lot of different ways you can invest in real estate, but to keep it simple, I primarily flip properties and hold properties. So buy them to rent out, or I'll buy them, fix them up, and sell them. As of recently, we have gotten into the e-commerce space, because we have taken what we've learned about investing in real estate. And essentially we were like, I'm 31, just turned 31. My husband is 32. And we were like, dang, why didn't we know this years ago? Like, had we known the information that we know now when we were in our early 20s, or just school period, we would have been set long time ago. And so that thought caused us to start an entirely new business called Kidvestors, where we essentially teach kids how to invest.
I love it.
Primarily, our target, of course, is children of color. And we created an entire investing curriculum, from real estate to stocks and all of that stuff. So started out investing, then moved on towards kind of like, okay, let's teach and show other people now.
I'm sitting here thinking, because even in my neighborhood, I think about first rewind. I think I have that exact same thought, that I'm like, why didn't I know this? Every time I get an email from you guys and I'm listening to the email and I'm like, or I'm reading the email, I'm like, I never thought about that. Or why didn't I know that? And it's right. Like, it's very some of it is very common knowledge to other people.
Right.
Or it's simple things or simple steps that I could have done when I was younger, because I'm almost 35 when this airs. I think I will, my birthday is in 2 weeks. So things I just didn't know.
Right.
And I'm still learning things just in my own personal process of buying a home. So let alone on the level that you guys are on. And I have 2 children.
Right.
So now I'm thinking of, okay, what do I want to make sure they know, or that I have in place for them, so that they aren't looking up 35 like, why didn't mama tell me this? So
right, exactly.
So what is the structure of that program of just, getting involved?
This particular program, as of now, is geared towards ages 5 to 12. So basically kind of elementary to early middle school.
Yeah.
And essentially what we did when we thought about it, we didn't want to just do another boring workbook. We wanted it to be, Earn Your Leisure coins this term, edutainment. So a combination of entertainment plus education. And so what we did, we created a fun just book about investing. The first one we launched was real estate, and then we created a cartoon, like a legit cartoon, a course, but a cartoon in cartoon format. So it's conversational. These kids are on adventures and they're finding for example, the first one is, treasure hunting theme. Mm-hmm. So the treasure is an investment property. So we take them on a journey of not knowing anything about real estate to finding their treasure, which is their investment property. And then same with stocks. We take them from not knowing anything about the stock market to basically purchasing their first stock, building their portfolio. And we do it in a fun cartoon 2D animated way. So
that is so dope. I'm just thinking like that is crazy.
It was so crazy how it came about too, because we literally, I can remember.
That's what I was about to ask you. Tell me that story. How did that even start?
We were literally sitting in a room, because entrepreneurs, right? So we just naturally, our brain is always going, how can we do something else? How can we, add more streams of income, right? And so we were building our rental portfolio. And I'll get to this later. And just being in real estate rentals, whether you have a property management or not, it can be very much more hands-on. It's not truly passive. Like, it's not completely hands-off. We have a property manager, but you're still ending up managing the manager. You get what I'm saying? So there's still a little bit of work involved, even though it's not as much. And so we were always just wondering, how can we just, add another stream of income, right? And so we were sitting in our bedroom, and my husband loosely, I don't even think he realized what he said, but he was like, let's do a kid's book. And immediately I'm like, that is brilliant.
I love you, man, I married.
That is brilliant. And he was like, what? It's like a kid's book. And so we did our research, and we were like, so there is a lot of entrepreneurship books out there for kids. But when we were looking, there was nothing that taught investing, like just investing, like not just starting a business, that's great, but learning how to invest. And so we saw you stock market ones, but what would happen is it would be a finance book, 30-page finance book for kids, but then maybe a page or two in stock market investing. Like, not a lot of information. And it definitely wasn't geared toward kids of color.
Okay.
Then there was none about real estate when we were doing our research. So we start writing this book. Finally, doing research, found a animator, because we're like, okay, we can write it, but oh dang, we can't draw. So we got to find an animator. Then we found not an animator, I'm sorry, an illustrator. Mm-hmm. And then we found the illustrator, pitched our book, and he was like, guys, this is boring. He was like, now granted, he has turned coach. He's like turned a mentor to us through this process. Yeah. And so we want to do the real estate book. And he was like, who wants to read about real estate at bedtime? And so we were telling him like our passion, what we wanted to do. And then he was like, guys, from what I'm hearing, you guys need to do a curriculum, not just a book.
One book, yeah.
One book. And so that's kind of how it evolved to like, okay, he has a point. We do. So we created a book, we created a workbook, and the course is like the biggest thing. Like it's dope. It's one of our like proudest accomplishments. And the stock one will be released early spring. And so that's how all of that came about. And then the name Kidvestors, we were like, that's like genius. So the first thing we did, we trademarked.
I was just about to say, first step.
Yeah, first step before we said anything. Like, we were almost at a year at this point and nobody knew what we were doing. Yeah. Like, we were so hush about it because, these internet streets, folks will steal in a second.
Yeah.
And so we trademarked, we, set up our LLC, we did all of the, legwork before we announced it to the world. And so that's how that came about. So, yeah.
And I think
a lot of attention, but
I think that's kind of how some of the greatest things happen. Is really you're thinking, what was missing when I was younger, and how could it have been presented in a way that I would have understood?
Right.
And I
Right.
think it's easy to say, I wish someone had taught me this when I was younger, or I wish I could teach this to someone else. But then you have to think about, how would I keep that person's attention? How could you keep my attention?
Exactly.
When I was
Exactly.
5 years old, or
Right.
when I was 10 years old, how could you have kept my attention? And I think a book, and especially a cartoon, that is
Yeah.
genius.
Right. And
When
it was
he said,
important.
I made a cartoon. What?
Right. And it was important to us too that we had people of color involved.
Yeah.
So illustrators Black, animator Black, publisher Black, the cartoon characters, the voice actors we hired Black. Like, we wanted a team that, the product itself didn't just target, but the people who were involved in helping us put this together, were also representing what we wanted to accomplish, essentially. And so, yeah, it's just we've been going to schools, pitching at schools, because our end goal, our long-term goal, is to really get it into the school systems.
Yeah.
So we have two locally that we've been in talks with. So prayers that comes about. So
They need
yeah.
this. And okay, so I see what you guys are doing now. Like I said, I get emails. I am taking the information in, because I love you'll send out an email and say, hey, do you have this? Do you know the 3 key steps you need to even prepare to think about getting a house? And I'm like,
Yeah.
no, I do not. And then I think that was an email like 2 years ago. I'm like, actually, no, I don't. And then I got the email. I'm like, so I made a little list, and I've been actually doing those things.
Well, that's good to hear, because it's like some people get the emails and they don't act on it. So the fact that you're retaining it, even an email you got 2 years ago, is like
Yes, I'm like,
encouraging.
if you send me an email about something I know nothing about, that I'm interested in, you are now the expert, and I'm going to take your advice. I can't combat you and say, well, no, you should do it this way. I have no idea. And I'm watching you guys on, when you do share, when you are remodeling a home, or, things like that. I'm watching. I'm like, she knows what she's doing, and we're doing the legwork. Thank you. They say you have to learn things on your own. No,
Right.
you don't. You actually can learn it from somebody who did
Other
it.
people. Right.
So it's great. I heard a pastor say once, it's great to learn from your own mistakes. It's even smarter to learn from other people's mistakes.
Exactly.
Like, that's the smart way to work. So let's rewind a few years back to for any of this.
Yes.
So y'all got married.
Yeah.
We're living life. And then decided what? Like, how did we get here?
That is hilarious. So, of course, you know how we met in Alabama. So after my husband and
They
got
were
married.
so cute when they were like, oh my gosh. I wish I could rewind. I have, this is before we took pictures of everything. I wish I had like Instagram stories from like me and you at dinner talking about the possibility of y'all getting married.
I remember that. I think we were in was it TGI? It wasn't TGI.
I feel like it was Fridays or Applebee's. It was one or the other.
Or Chili's. That's what it was. Chili's, because it was in East Chase.
Don't we sound country, y'all? We like Fridays, Applebee's. And it was something. And I just remember us having that conversation. I'm like, girl, married a man. And we were like, and then they got married. It was so cute. But I could tell they were on the same mind wave. Like their hearts were beautiful for each other, but you guys thought the same. And I thought that was so great, the way you talked about him. Like, I love that. Okay, I'll put it this way. Y'all thought in ways that complemented one another.
Yes.
Not the same, but in a way that this could work. I think this could work. But okay, so you guys you get married, you're living life, and then you decide, tomorrow we're buying a house. No?
So we moved to Kentucky. We were working regular jobs. So my husband was traveling. He was not a travel nurse, but like a travel tech. So he's taking on new assignments for different hospitals every few months. I'm working at U of L. I'm in the nursing education / HR department. And we were just working regular jobs. We happened to be living in an area that was in the process of revitalization. I'll say revitalization because a lot of people don't like the G word, and that starts stirring up a lot of stuff. But that's a whole dissertation in itself.
That's a podcast interview.
Exactly. And so it was my husband. He would always see these properties that needed to be fixed up, like vacant properties. Again, because when you start seeing coffee shops and Whole Foods and Sally's, walking down the street where she wasn't walking before, there's some changes.
Telltale sign. That's always a sign.
There's some changes. So anyway, there was a property right next to us, and my husband was like, we should flip this. Mind you, we didn't know nothing about real estate, like nothing. He was just like, we should do this. But at the time, I had a coworker who was an investor and a landlord.
Okay.
And every day we shared an office space. Every day she had a horror story about real estate. And so in my mind, I'm like, yeah, I don't want no parts of that. I'm good over here. But the meantime, I would go home and my husband, his mind is just like going. And so I had not wanted to do anything in regards to real estate at all. I wanted no parts. And so it wasn't until there was a local seminar here and he was like, just come with me to this so you can hear it. Because all I heard was negative feedback up until this point. Went to that local seminar. I was able to witness people who knew what they were doing it successfully and explaining it to me in a way where I felt it was attainable and made sense.
Okay.
And so with me being a planner, that's how my mind works. My husband's a big visionary big picture person. I'm the detail person.
Yeah.
And so having someone break down the details really helped me. And so fast forward almost 5 years later, and here we are.
Okay, so the first property. Okay, so you went, you got the information, you're like, okay, I can do this. Now, having the idea of I can do this and doing it, it's not the same thing either. Exactly. So how did it go from, okay, because your husband's like, I got the idea. And then you're like, okay, I see how this is practical. We could do this. So how did it get to, and not like all the steps, but like,
right.
Are you actually say, okay, we're going to do this? And how did that first flip go? Like
we said, we're just going to do it. And so one of the things that we learned in the class was just funding. So we had regular, we were just two average income earners. We weren't making a ton of money, but we were okay, especially with no kids, but we knew we didn't want to work forever. So that was number one. I had actually, prior to that, what's crazy is I had started investing in the stock market before I ever went into real estate. Okay. And so I eventually convinced him like, hey, we really should start investing. And then he convinced me on the real estate side. And so as far as real estate was concerned, we took what we learned, which was funding. Now, granted, like I said, we didn't have a ton of money. And so we had to be creative and learn, okay, how are we going to do this with the little income that we had at the time? Because it's not like a personal residence. So like a personal residence, there's there's down payment assistance programs. There's a lot of things. It's a lower barrier of entry to real estate when you start versus when you start investing in commercial properties. And when I say commercial, banks typically label commercial as anything you're not living in. So it could be a traditional or regular property, but if you're not living in it, instead of putting, 5% down or 10% down or 3.5%, like some FHA programs, you typically do have to put down 20% minimum. We didn't have 20% minimum at that time. We were newly married. We really were just starting on our financial journey together. And so one of the things we learned was how to creatively finance. One of those ways being is finding private lenders. And so private lenders are just regular everyday people who may have a whole lot of money and they're just looking at a way to invest. And so we went to a couple of networking events. We actually went to, I think our first one was in I want to say St. Louis.
Mm-hmm.
I want to say St. Louis was our first networking event. And we connected with some strangers, private lenders who had a lot of money. Told them about some of the deals that we saw from our realtor. And long story short, we ended up getting connected to a lender who lived in California.
Uh-huh.
And so we find this property from our realtor, we run the numbers, we do our due diligence, we present the opportunity to them. Now, keep in mind, we had no experience. We haven't
Like this
flipped,
is
we
our
haven't
first
done
time.
nothing. This is
First
the
time
first time.
we just out here on a whole.
We were able to secure $170,000 from a complete stranger in California who never even saw what we looked like. We didn't even do Zoom call. Like we just had an email conversation. Email was, and I think we did follow up with a phone call, but we have never physically seen these people. They wired two inexperienced wannabe real estate investors $170,000 to do the first property. Now, here's where it gets interesting. We did not make nearly as much as we wanted on that first property. I think we walked away with like $8,000. And we were supposed to make, I think if my memory serves me correctly, our aim was to make around 45.
Yeah, that's
not the same at all. Not the same. And, not to our surprise, we were new, so we made a ton of mistakes that cost us financially. It was a joint venture. And for people who are listening who don't know what a joint venture is, it's basically where you split the profits. So because we were new and they were taking on a lot of risk, especially being long distance, we were like, okay, we'll give you all the money you need, but we're going to split the profit 50-50. Mm-hmm. So we were supposed to really make around 80 and then split it both ways. We ended up making only like 16. So our portion was 8. They got 8. But that property taught us a lot. It taught us, 1, we need to know our costs. 2, how to manage contractors, how to vet people better. 3, just overall knowing the process of a flip. We literally did not know anything. And then 4, just running our numbers better, not being emotionally led when it comes to real estate. And so that one property taught us a whole lot. And the investors still invest with us today. Oh, good. And so they didn't make as much.
Like, are they still with you guys?
Yeah, they still invest because they also understood the risk. Yeah. And then they still got all of their money back plus some. Yeah. Exactly. So they still invest with us today. We have a lot of investors who still invest with us from the beginning. And so that's primarily how we fund our investments, is through private lenders. And I know you're doing this because of social media. Social media has played a huge part in us getting private lenders because people see our journey. They see the behind the scenes. They see us actually doing things, and they see the end result. They see they're getting their money back. And so they sign up through social media. Like we have one person locally, even though she was local, she signed up on our landing page through our social media, just simply seeing us on Instagram. So social media has also helped tremendously helped our business growth too.
Okay, so I know I have a question, or I have 2 questions. But one question, and one thing I like about the emails and just you guys' mission and your passion is you do focus a lot on, from what I see, on showing people how to invest without spending their own money. Exactly. And I think even me, I always felt like I can't do this because I don't have the money saved up to this, or I'm not in a position where I can't get a loan from a bank. They're not, I'm an entrepreneur, I have 2 small children, I'm divorced. So they're like, she's not the candidate of who we want to give $200,000 to, but you guys are really big on, showing people the steps of how to invest with other people's money. Right. From the investors. Can you talk a little bit more just about teaching that to other people?
Yeah, so that's huge for us because we know, especially people of color, I'm not even going to get into the whole redlining situation, because again, that could be a whole nother podcast
But
itself.
you can go there a little bit.
The discrimination,
You got
a little bit still happens today. It really does.
It does.
It does. You have, so it triggered me. Because so of course you had obvious redlining back in the day, where lenders were literally just not approving Black people for mortgages. Essentially, they would essentially mark out certain areas of land and areas in certain cities, and they would essentially assess low appraisal values on purpose, because they're not going to lend but so much. So for example, most lenders will lend you maybe 70 to 80% of the value. So not only will they have a racist appraiser assign a low value to your property, on top of that, the lenders are only going to give you but so much. Then on top of that, they're going to make the requirements a lot more difficult for people of color to even buy property. So that's kind of what redlining was in a general summary. And honestly, a lot of people, I think I read somewhere where it says African Americans by 2053, their net worth is projected to be zero. I think I heard someone came on, I think it was the Breakfast Club or some other podcast. It was an analyst, and he was basically saying how if things continue, African American net worth is going to be zero by 2053. And that was before COVID. And so the pandemic has kind of widened the wealth gap, and is more than likely probably going to accelerate that even faster if Black people don't do something different. And so home ownership is a big piece of that. A lot of people can't own homes because, one, they're overwhelmed with student loan debt. Mm-hmm. That affects their debt to income ratio. That affects their ability to borrow, which affects their ability to get a home. And so what a lot of people don't realize is equity is huge. There's, a lot of our white counterparts, they can send their kids to college because they're using home equity loans in their homes. They can pay off debt. They can buy cars for their kids, while all of us were probably riding buses and walking, and our white counterparts, they were driving to school, and so it's home ownership. Yeah. It's huge. Especially it's a big factor when you're calculating a lot of people's net worth. And so real estate is a high barrier of entry, and a lot of people don't get involved because they have been told that you need a lot of money to invest. Yeah. And we have killed that myth and said, you don't. Now it will probably be more difficult. Yeah. You have to be a little more creative. You will have to get outside, think outside of the box, get out your comfort zone to network. Because a lot of people are like, well, how can I find private lenders? You can't Google private lenders. Exactly. Private lenders are just your everyday people who are just looking for ways to invest their money in non-traditional methods. And so that requires you networking, getting out your comfort zone to meet these people. Outside of private lending, there's just a lot. I could be here all day, but there's subject twos, there's lease options. There's so many creative ways to get into real estate without a whole lot of money. We've been told, okay, I need 20% down every single time I want to buy the property. And that's just not true. Like, we're a testament to that. Like, that's not true. And we're not the only ones. There's a lot of people in our network investing in real estate, killing it, because they are thinking outside of the box and getting creative. Now, do you have to have time to do those things? Yes, absolutely. It's not just going to fall in your lap, but it is possible. And that's one of the reasons why we are avid in showing our journey, because we want to show, hey, if at the time we were 24, 25, if two 20-somethings who had no idea about real estate have been able to do this without an inheritance, we weren't no trust fund babies. If we were able to do this, you can too. Yeah.
See, you basically just said, in a lot of words, were get on the email list, sign up to be mentored by her and her husband,
Yes.
because they obviously know what they're doing. Like I said, I've watched this, and I am a firm believer of getting mentors, paying for them, getting mentors in areas that you want to be successful in, and you just don't know where to start. You don't know where to do it. And you guys, like you said, you have a curriculum together, or, that you've formed and written, and you have all of these resources that you guys have created to help the everyday person like me. I'm like, I feel like I did this podcast just for me. You just need to
mentors help. Our first mentor was our second private lender. And this was our first time meeting another Black investor. And so remember, we're in our, mid-20s. And so prior to now, we hadn't seen a lot of Black investors. Like, you don't see it a lot. And so he not only was our second private lender. So he lended money to invest in another property with us. It happened to end up being our first rental. And not only did he lend money to us, he mentored and guided us. One, he probably didn't want us to lose his money, which I respect. He was probably like, let me help these kids so they
I get my money back.
They don't, exactly. And then just seeing him, he was showing us our portfolio, showing us his portfolio, and it was just amazing. And then we met another older gentleman at an auction, and he was talking about he had 30 properties, and we still talk to him now. That was at the time.
Yeah.
And he probably has double that now. And it's just seeing investors who looked like us, who were successful.
That's the thing, who look like us.
Right. We knew it was possible. And so mentorship is huge. Not saying you still won't make mistakes, but you can mitigate and reduce those mistakes when you have someone holding your hand. So yeah.
Okay, so we're gonna start wrapping up. This is so good. No, I'm just I wish it could be longer. I already feel in my spirit that I'm gonna bring you back. We're gonna have to come back, because you touched on so many different things. You gave some really good advice, some great tips, but also touched on some things that I'm like, dang, I wanna dig in that a little bit more. So we're definitely gonna have to try to you said I got you out of your comfort zone. I'm gonna keep you out of it. You're staying out of it. But
I'm gonna take my own advice.
So if someone wants to get in touch with you guys, somebody's listening to this and they're like, okay, I want to get started. I'm basically still living paycheck to paycheck, but I want to start learning more about this. How can they get in touch with you guys?
Definitely follow us on pretty much every outlet, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, whatever. And then make sure you take our free real estate 101 class. We highly recommend people to take that before they sign up for anything else of ours, because nothing else of ours is even going to make sense if you don't even watch that. That will help with the language and the terminology and just the basic fundamentals of investing in real estate. No matter what avenue, those fundamentals cover it regardless of what area you want to go in, whether it's, Airbnb or flipping or wholesaling or rental, long-term rentals. And so that's the first thing. And if you are ready to take action, we do have a program that we recently launched. It's definitely one of the best, Flipping A to Z. And that pretty much takes you from concept to you getting the keys to the house to sell or refinance or hold if you want to hold your rental. And so we walk you through every single step, everything we wished we knew. We go through that in detail. And so yeah.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Time out of your day, because I know you could be doing other things. I'm sure it's somebody emailing you now trying to get some help. Somebody got an email and now they're confused. I don't know what I'm doing. Please help me. So thank you.
Auto replies are lit.
There we go. Shout out to the auto replies. Okay. But to everyone who's listening, be sure to check the show notes. If you're watching this on YouTube, check the description. I will have links on how you guys can get in touch with Pettway Estates. I will also have just little nuggets from the conversation so you can find it easily and just navigate directly to that part of the podcast. So again, thank you, girl. And everyone listening, I will catch you guys on the next episode. Bye.